2020 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. We did just get another update from Pima County Sheriff's Office, so let's bring in senior national correspondent Brian Entin, still on the ground in Tucson as he has been from the beginning. So anything new, Brian?
Yeah, I was just looking through this update that they sent us. Some of the stuff we already knew, the DNA analysis is underway, Connell, which we knew that there was DNA recovered from Nancy's home that they're still analyzing. They're going to do the investigative genetic genealogy. This is kind of interesting. They are continuing to look for a suspect, an individual captured on doorbell or surveillance video. They are requesting information related to the person, which we've all seen. And this is the part that stood out to me. Investigators are not ruling out the possibility that more than one person may be involved, which we've said for a while, but it's interesting that they're saying that again, because there has been this theory, Connell, that the person in the front who we saw in surveillance video, that there may have also been someone around the back, and this could have been a 2 or 3 person job. And it's interesting now that the sheriff is saying in this official release that they are not ruling out the possibility that more than one person may be involved. So that was the one thing that really stood out to me the most, Connell.
Yeah, it's interesting what they choose to emphasize, right? I guess to some degree, not that that's something we wouldn't talked about or considered, but that they choose to emphasize it in this particular update. I was about to promote this special you're doing over the weekend, but I'll just ask you about it. Tell us, you're going to be on tomorrow night, right? Aren't you taking questions? Tell us what the special's about.
We are, yeah. So we're going to be talking to people live, taking their questions live. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern tomorrow night, obviously on News Nation. And it's going to be interesting because people have so many questions about this case. And there are things that I don't even think of that they think of or that they see that really stand out. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even think of that. So it's going to be very, very interactive where people are able to tell us what they've noticed, ask us questions, and then we'll have a panel of experts who can really dig in a way that we really haven't had the opportunity to yet, because we'll have the full hour, which will be really awesome, Connell.
It's good, and like we've said, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this story in so many ways, but just in the interest also of the public, just 20 days in, people are still so, there's so much emotion, attachment, I guess, to Savannah Guthrie, to the family, and also just interest in the story and hope that it comes to some sort of a positive conclusion. Brian?
The night of January 31, 2026 was calm in the quiet hills of Catalina Foothills, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie, 84, settled into her familiar evening routine. Dinner with family had been warm and full of laughter, the kind of night that seemed ordinary, the kind that promised another peaceful day tomorrow. Around 9:45 p.m., she returned to her home, closing the garage door behind her, unaware that this night would mark the start of an ordeal that would grip the nation. Hours later, concern began to creep in. By the next morning, when she failed to attend a scheduled virtual church service, friends and family sensed that something was wrong. Her family drove to her home and found the front door locked, the house quiet, her personal belongings untouched. There was no sign she had left voluntarily, and nothing suggested she had wandered away. Nancy's health and mobility were factors that made her sudden disappearance all the more alarming. She required daily medication and lived independently, but with some limitations. Investigators who arrived at the home quickly realized this was not a typical missing person case. The scene suggested that she may have been taken against her will. Neighbors recalled seeing nothing unusual, no suspicious cars or strangers in the area, adding to the mystery. Surveillance cameras in the vicinity captured little, with only fleeting glimpses of movement that provided few clues. As the hours turned into days, the absence of clear evidence left law enforcement racing against time, coordinating search efforts and following leads that could offer even the smallest hint of where Nancy might be. By the end of that first day, the gravity of the situation had set in. The community, once peaceful and routine, now felt tense and uncertain. What had happened to Nancy Guthrie? Who could have taken her and why? These questions would become the driving force behind a months-long investigation that would capture national attention and the hearts of those watching and hopping for answers. By the morning of February 1, the quiet neighborhood of Catalina Foothills was no longer calm. Law enforcement had arrived, moving quickly to secure Nancy Guthrie's home as a potential crime scene. Detectives began a meticulous search, examining every room, every corner, and every clue that could explain her sudden disappearance. The atmosphere was tense. This was no ordinary missing person case. Initial observations raised concern. Nancy's personal belongings, her purse, phone, and medications, were all left behind. There were no signs of a struggle visible to the untrained eye, yet subtle details suggested more than a simple disappearance. Officers noted that items inside the home appeared slightly disturbed, as if someone had moved quickly through the space. With Nancy's mobility limitations, it was clear she could not have left the house on her own. Neighbors were interviewed. Most had slept through the night, unaware of any unusual activity. A few reported seeing unfamiliar vehicles parked nearby at odd hours, but nothing conclusive. Surveillance cameras in the vicinity were collected for review, though footage was limited and provided only fleeting glimpses of movement outside the property. Every small detail was examined, no matter how insignificant it seemed. As the day progressed, the investigation expanded beyond the home. Teams canvassed the surrounding streets, questioning residents, checking local businesses, and monitoring roads leading out of the neighborhood. Social media posts and community networks were activated, with neighbors sharing tips and possible sightings. Authorities made it clear, any piece of information, no matter how small, could be critical. By nightfall, law enforcement had a growing understanding that Nancy Guthrie's disappearance was deliberate and potentially dangerous. The local sheriff's office and federal agencies coordinated, pooling resources and expertise. What had started as a missing person report was now an active search for someone taken against their will, with investigators racing to piece together the moments of that night before crucial leads were lost forever. In the days following Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, investigators combed through her home with painstaking attention to detail. Every object, every surface, was scrutinized for evidence that might explain what had happened. Though there was no immediate sign of forced entry, subtle anomalies raised questions. Doors were locked, windows intact, and yet something in the arrangement of items inside suggested that someone had been there. A breakthrough came with the review of surveillance footage from nearby homes. While most cameras captured nothing, a few revealed fleeting glimpses of movement near Nancy's property late at night. A figure, partially obscured and wearing dark clothing, was seen approaching the residence and then leaving moments later. Though the image was grainy, detectives noted details that could later help identify the individual. The timing of the footage aligned with the window in which Nancy vanished, offering the first concrete lead. At the same time, forensic teams collected items from inside the home. Personal effects, fingerprints, and other trace evidence were carefully preserved. Though the scene offered few obvious clues, every element had potential significance. Even the absence of items, things left untouched, helped investigators form a picture of what might have occurred. Outside the home, the search widened. Neighborhood streets, parks, and public areas were canvassed. Volunteers and law enforcement worked together, handing out flyers and collecting tips from local residents. Reports of suspicious activity were cataloged, even if they seemed minor at first. Every call and observation was treated as potentially vital in the effort to locate Nancy. The pressure was immense. Each day that passed without answers intensified concern for her safety. Investigators were aware that time was critical in abduction cases, and every detail mattered. The combination of physical evidence, surveillance, and eyewitness accounts slowly began to form the framework of the investigation, a framework that would guide the search and eventually reveal the troubling reality behind Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. As the investigation progressed into its second week, law enforcement intensified their efforts. Detectives pored over the surveillance footage and eyewitness statements, seeking any detail that could point to Nancy Guthrie's whereabouts. The fleeting figure seen near her home became a central focus, and teams worked to determine who it might have been. Local tips began to flow in steadily, with residents recalling strange vehicles, unusual noises, or people in the area at odd hours. Authorities also began analyzing Nancy's recent communications and daily routines. Phone records, emails, and social media activity were carefully examined to rule out any premeditated contact or suspicious interactions. Friends and family were interviewed multiple times, their recollections helping to create a timeline of the final hours she was known to be home. Everything seemed ordinary on the surface, yet the disappearance suggested deliberate planning by someone who knew how to avoid leaving obvious traces. Forensic teams continued their meticulous work inside the residence. Every surface was checked for fingerprints, DNA, and other trace evidence. Though initial results were limited, the investigators remained hopeful that science might eventually reveal the missing pieces of the puzzle. The challenge was enormous. Nancy's disappearance was both sudden and mysterious, leaving little physical evidence but creating a growing sense of urgency in the community. Public awareness campaigns were launched to encourage anyone with information to come forward. Local media coverage and social media posts helped amplify the search, ensuring that even small leads could be reported quickly. The combined effort of law enforcement and the community kept hope alive that Nancy Guthrie could be found safely. As the investigation deepened, the tension remained palpable. Every day brought new questions, small clues, and the ongoing fear for her well-being. The story of her disappearance was far from over, and the path to answers was still unfolding. If you want to follow the latest developments in Nancy Guthrie's case and uncover every twist and clue, like and subscribe to Dark Unveiling, your source for in-depth true crime storytelling. As the search for Nancy Guthrie stretched into its third week, the quiet Catalina foothills community felt the weight of uncertainty.
Office announces that investigators are looking into the possibility there was an accomplice involved in this case. It comes as a 911 dispatch manager tells Fox News they are being flooded with tips over Guthrie's disappearance.
We have intel and we have investigators on the other side of these calls, basically, that are combing through the thousands of tips that are being received in this center. There has been a few times where we feel that somebody needs to look at this tip, somebody needs to look at this lead immediately. So we will call the appropriate investigators to say, hey, this information was put into the call, but we need somebody to look at this immediately.
Residents who once went about their routines without a second thought now eyed every unfamiliar car, every stranger walking down the streets, with suspicion. Local schools, businesses, and community centers circulated flyers with Nancy's photo, reminding everyone to stay vigilant and report anything unusual. Law enforcement continued to coordinate search efforts, expanding into surrounding neighborhoods, parks, and even nearby hiking trails. Volunteers joined organized search teams, scouring areas where a person of Nancy's age could potentially be hidden or stranded. Despite the effort, no new significant evidence had yet emerged, leaving investigators and family members frustrated but determined. Media coverage amplified the urgency of the case. News outlets shared the story nationwide, appealing for tips and raising awareness. Social media became both a tool and a challenge, as countless posts offered speculation, possible sightings, and support for Nancy's family. Investigators carefully sifted through the tips, knowing that even the smallest detail could provide a breakthrough. As tension grew, law enforcement focused on patterns that could indicate a suspect. The brief surveillance footage from the night of her disappearance became a key piece of the puzzle. Analysts studied it repeatedly, looking for distinctive features, gait, or timing that could help identify the figure seen near Nancy's home. Meanwhile, forensic teams continued testing trace evidence collected from the property, hoping DNA or fingerprints could reveal someone connected to the case. Through it all, Nancy's family remained publicly composed but privately anguished, urging the community to remain alert while clinging to hope.
Grateful to be with you tonight, and of course, it is a very difficult time in Tucson. It's been a living nightmare for this community. For the past 3 weeks, we've all just been shocked to the core. Those of us who know Savannah and the family as I do, It's been very, very difficult. I know some friends have had difficulty even sleeping. You mentioned Savannah. My goodness, I was with her for 4 years, fortunate enough to be with her before she went over to the NBC affiliate KVOA, Channel 4. She was with me as I was anchoring the nightly PBS affiliate program here, and Savannah was part of our student crew. And I have to tell you, I didn't need to do much mentoring. She was wonderful. She learned quickly, and I had the privilege a couple of times of sharing the camera with her as we did membership pledge drives on the local PBS affiliate. And I can still remember, even though it's more than 35 years ago, going out on the mall at the University of Arizona and talking a little bit about fundamentals of field reporting, how you do a stand-up, basically. And she was a very fast learner. She was very special. She is very special. And we all want to see this come to a safe resolution with a happy ending. That's my prayers every night.
Every day that passed without answers was another day of fear, but also another day of collective effort. The search for Nancy Guthrie had become a mission for an entire community, and for law enforcement, every lead, no matter how small, mattered. To keep following this story and uncover the details as the investigation unfolds, like and subscribe to Dark Unveiling, your front row seat to true crime and in-depth analysis. Weeks into the search, investigators finally found a lead that shifted the investigation from a broad, uncertain hunt to a focused inquiry. Forensic teams recovered a small piece of evidence near a walking trail not far from Nancy Guthrie's home, a glove partially buried under leaves and dirt. Initial analysis revealed traces of blood. While it was too early to draw definitive conclusions, the presence of biological material immediately elevated the item to critical importance. At the same time, neighbors came forward with information that had previously seemed trivial. One resident recalled seeing an unfamiliar car parked near the property around the time Nancy disappeared. Another mentioned a figure carrying a large bag on the walking trail the night before her family reported her missing. These details, when combined with the glove discovery, suggested the possibility that someone had transported Nancy away from her home, supporting law enforcement's theory that she had been taken against her will. Investigators also began to examine digital evidence more closely. Security camera footage from nearby streets and businesses was reanalyzed for patterns and timing. Analysts worked tirelessly, enhancing images and comparing movements with eyewitness reports. Each frame of video, each minor observation, was scrutinized for anything that could identify a suspect or reveal Nancy's location. The discovery of the glove and the corroborating reports marked a turning point in the case. While the public still had no confirmed information about Nancy's whereabouts, law enforcement finally had a tangible piece of evidence to follow. The focus of the investigation shifted to identifying any individuals who could have been in the area at that specific time and determining their connection to Nancy's disappearance. For the first time since that fateful night, there was a sense of cautious optimism among detectives. Though the case remained unsolved, this break provided a concrete starting point, one that could eventually unravel the mystery of what happened to Nancy Guthrie. With the discovery of the glove and new witness accounts, investigators began narrowing their focus. Law enforcement cross-checked local records, surveillance footage, and tip lines, looking for anyone who might match the movements captured near Nancy Guthrie's home. The goal was clear: identify potential suspects and determine if any had connections to the neighborhood or knowledge of Nancy's routines. Detectives also revisited prior reports of suspicious activity, carefully analyzing patterns that had previously seemed unrelated. The timing of each sighting, the descriptions of unknown vehicles, and the few fleeting glimpses of a person near her home were pieced together into a timeline. Though incomplete, this reconstruction allowed investigators to rule out innocent activity and concentrate on leads with genuine potential. At the same time, forensic evidence was yielding incremental insights. The glove contained trace fibers and partial fingerprints, which were compared against local, state, and federal databases. While no immediate matches were found, the data helped eliminate possibilities and refine the focus. Even the smallest details, shoe prints, tire tracks, and leaf impressions, were documented meticulously, forming a composite picture of the person who may have taken Nancy. Family and friends continued to assist the investigation. Their recollections, daily routines, and interactions with Nancy were mapped to identify any unusual contacts or potential threats. Investigators stressed that every detail, no matter how minor it seemed, could provide a link to the person responsible for her disappearance. Public awareness remained critical. Law enforcement continued to appeal for tips, encouraging anyone with information to come forward. The combination of community vigilance, forensic evidence, and methodical investigation began to give the case direction. While Nancy's whereabouts were still unknown, the framework for identifying suspects had been established, bringing investigators one step closer to understanding what had happened on that fateful night. Months have passed since Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, yet the mystery remains unresolved. Her case continues to challenge investigators, testing the limits of forensic science, community coordination, and law enforcement persistence. Each lead, every tip, and all pieces of evidence contribute to the growing picture of what may have occurred, but the ultimate truth remains just out of reach. The investigation has transformed not only Nancy's family, but the community around her. Neighbors who once walked familiar streets without concern now remain vigilant, sharing information, monitoring their surroundings, and supporting one another through the uncertainty. Media coverage has helped maintain public awareness, keeping the case in the national spotlight and encouraging those with knowledge to come forward. Law enforcement continues to analyze evidence, re-examine timelines, and follow up on promising leads. The partial fingerprints, surveillance images, and physical traces like the glove serve as the backbone of the ongoing investigation, ensuring that the search does not lose focus. Specialists in forensic analysis, digital reconstruction, and criminal profiling collaborate, determined to find answers and bring resolution. Nancy's family, while facing unimaginable uncertainty, has remained steadfast in advocating for her safe return. They urge the public to remain vigilant and provide any information, however small, that could assist in locating her. The community's support has been a crucial element, reinforcing that even in the darkest moments, collective effort can sustain hope. While the case remains unsolved, every step taken by investigators brings them closer to uncovering the truth. Nancy Guthrie's disappearance is a stark reminder of how quickly lives can change and how the persistence of dedicated law enforcement, combined with community vigilance, can keep hope alive. The search continues, and with it, the promise that one day the answers will emerge and justice, or at least understanding, will follow.